Hi, this is Dixie. I just pushed the Lancet on my alternative site test so that I can do this. And what I'm going to be talking to you about is that glucose smartwatch that people are buying who have diabetes to be able to, you can see it's doing that, to be able to check their blood sugar and how I grabbed a used test strip, kind of not paying attention because I'm trying to make a video for you. But anyway, what I'm doing is doing this, and you're gonna see why in just a sec, because I'm gonna pull up my watch and see what it says. Okay, so it's analyzing the blood sugar, and we're gonna give it a second because it does what it does. So 161. Now I ate about 2 hours ago, about an hour and a half ago. So 161, and I'm going to write that down because I can't enter it while I'm talking to you. All right, so 161, we're all in agreement. I'm going to throw away my test strip. And after I do mine, because I have that poor blood circulation that I was mentioning, so I take one of these little beauty rollers, this little miniature one, and just roll it where I popped the blood with the thing. Or I take one of these little miniatures that are for, both of those are for face and under eye puffiness, but they feel good. They stop me from bleeding. And then I either put on Vaseline or Egyptian Magic on the site. Now, because of the alternative site testing, I had to have some lab work done this week, and the lady jabbed me so hard that this was done on Monday. It's Friday. These are still whelped and bruised. There, where I test myself all the time, just little red marks. So let's get into it. So I got the watch, didn't think I had diabetes, was doing it because I always thought I had hypoglycemic tendencies, and I did. Let's test my blood glucose before we go any further. Now remember, it's 161, and the meal I had, so good. And it is currently at 90%. 76. Okay? 161 is a world of difference, and I'm going to do it again so that should anybody be doubting it. 2. $76. Okay. So I'm going to write that down. All right. So I had not been feeling well. Now we can get into it. You can see it's wildly inaccurate. I had not been feeling well. I had a whole host. This is my little hand warmer that I use to warm up the area before I do the testing. It looks like a little bed of coals on the one side. I bring this up because, before I forget, if you have issues with poor blood circulation or anything, putting a hand warmer on the area for a minute or two might help you. Okay, so I've been having health issues since the beginning of COVID that when I would go to my doctor, who I should have fired, he poo-pooed it. Some of my symptoms, I'm going to read them to you, okay? It's terrible that my doctor was inattentive. So some of my symptoms, I had frequent urination. There were times that I was going to the toilet every 15 minutes. and peeing and sometimes not making it to the toilet, okay? Uncool. Consuming a lot of water without feeling thirsty. You hear diabetics talking about that thirst. I never had the thirst. I was just like doing that gallon water challenge. And so I was like, oh, this is why I'm peeing so much. But then, I was tired. I would get up to go to work. I would work a 10-hour shift. I would come home, have a meal, go to bed and sleep 12 to 14 hours. Do it all over again. I had no drive. Like if I was asked to do something at work, I would literally say, can't somebody else do it? It wasn't laziness. I just didn't have the motivation. This is something I found out in the emergency room. I had this clear slime on the inside of my toilet, which is a sign of, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but whatever, glucosuria, which is where your body is trying to dump so much sugar that it's pouring out of you everywhere it can. So if you have that clear slime in the inside of your toilet where the water sits, and the toilet is like impossible to keep clean, get yourself checked. I began having dental problems. Like I would brush my teeth, but they weren't like staying clean. They felt gross. Just damn. I had female problems. I had rawness in my genital area. It was from all that sugar coming out of me. I sometimes had diarrhea. I sometimes had constipation. I had hemorrhoids. And it's because I was so tired. I was like, you know what? Let me grab a Snickers. You know what? Let me grab some nuts. And so I was making good food choices, but I was supplementing with a lot of snacks because the amount of urine I was pushing out, my body could not hold on to nutrients, is what the dietitian told me. So if that's you, get yourself checked. The same with hemorrhoids. You don't have time to properly digest. If you're getting a lot of fiber, but you're still having them, it's because you're pushing out so much urine and feces to get rid of the sugar that your body is not fully able to get that nutrients that they need. My wounds were taking a long time to heal. I have a list. So my wounds were taking a long time to heal, which I didn't think about it at the time, but it was after, when I was in the emergency room a few weeks ago. The doctor pointed to this little cut that I had. And he was like, when did you get that? I was like, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe. And I started thinking about it. I was like, maybe Thanksgiving. And he was like, yeah. So back to the watch. I just want to give you a little background about the things that my regular physician should have caught, but didn't give a crap. Okay. So I got the watch and it kept saying I was in the normal range on the low side. And I was like, man, I am lucky. Woo-woo. And I was at my sister's and I said, hey, I just read this thing that if you have any device for blood sugar, glucose, that you should calibrate it against a blood stick. And she was like, yeah, that's true. And we talked about the different kinds of devices. And I said, well, I want to calibrate my watch. And so she was like, okay, cool. So she goes to stick my finger. I'm not going to go into all that, but let's just say I was very dramatic and a wiener, okay? She sticks my finger. Her machine is doing her little glucose thing, which hers is way fancier than mine. She doesn't say anything. And my sister, whenever she gets quiet, something's up. So I said, what is it? And she goes, your blood sugar is 577. She was like, you might want to call your doctor. So I said, okay. It was still during doctor hours. So I round up my stuff to leave. I called the doctor and I said, I told the doctor what my blood sugar was. Now, I was just getting over COVID. I was symptom-free for at least a week. But if I took a test, I was still showing positive. They said it's normal, blah, blah, but go in through the emergency room and get them to check your sugar. So my doctor says, because it's her glucose meter, maybe it's contaminated with hers and yours on the blood. Okay, fine, whatever. So I drive home, an hour drive. My doctor, he says, stay hydrated on the drive. I'm like, oh, no problem. I absolutely will. And so my doctor, bless his heart, God bless him, he he should have had checked this during my physical. But anyway, I go into the emergency room. They test me for COVID. I test positive. They believe me because I don't have a fever. I'm asymptomatic, but they still have to quarantine me. So they put me in a little room, and they bring me a couple of little blankets, and I think she brought me a glass of water. So the phlebotomist comes by, and she pokes my finger, and she goes, and she squeezes my finger again, because it's still bleeding, because, you know, they use those huge lancet. I would never let somebody touch me with one that big now. But anyway, she squeezes the blood out, and she does it again, and she goes, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, okay, and I'm on this little, like, plastic doctor office chair in this little tiny quarantine room. And she's like, I'll be right back. And so she leaves. These two very nice orderlies come in, and the one has a wheelchair, and the other, they're wearing the hazmat suits because of the COVID. And she's like, your blood is 640. I was like, what? She's like, your blood is, your, and she's stuttering like that. She's like, your blood sugar is 640. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what that meant. So I was just like, yay, almost 1,000. I didn't know. And so the doctor comes out from the emergency room, and it was a lady doctor. She was very nice. And she was like, okay, so your blood sugar is very high. We're going to start you on these IVs, and we're admitting you. And I was like, I don't want to be admitted. And she's like, you know what? I understand. I said, no. You don't understand. I was like, I have a dog, and I'm telling her all these things. And the lady, I'm sure she's heard nonsense bigger than my nonsense before. And so, sorry, I'm trying to get the camera to give us better light. There we go. And so she's like, no, I'm admitting you. She was like, you're in great danger right now, or something. I don't remember her exact words, but whatever it was, I was like, okay. So they go, and I thought because it was an emergency room that I was probably going to be like 3, 4, 5 hours before I got into a room. And so I was sitting there in this little quarantine room, and I'm shivering, and they come in and they start one IV, and they put 2 bags off of it, and they come down with this other bag for IVs, and they said, we've been waiting on the room for you in cardiac care. I don't need to be in cardiac care. Oh yes, you do. They were like, you're at very big risk for some very major health events, and they wouldn't say what it was. So I get up into cardiac care, and they put another IV in my other arm with 2 more bags. And I said, well, why don't you put all the bags into one thing? And they said, well, there's only so much room in the IV tubing for the liquid, and we got to get as much in you as possible. Okay. So they take my blood sugar again. It's 697. And I'm like, well, this isn't wonderful. So I called my sister, or I texted her because she was working. And I said, just so you know, they're admitting me into the hospital. And she was like, oh, I'm so glad. Weirdo. I didn't realize how critical my health was at that moment. So they have me take off all my outside of the world clothes, and they washed me with like betadine solution because of the COVID. Not that I still had it, but I don't know, protocol. I don't know. Part of this is hazy because there was just so much going on, and it was very confusing. I was very emotional. So my sister sends me a text, and she says, have you called Mom? I was like, no, I have not. She was like, I'm calling her. I was like, no. And she called everybody else relevant. Okay, so it's whatever. Anyway, so I'm checking. my blood glucose with this little watch. Okay? And I'm going to check it while we're talking. And so I'm checking my blood glucose and it's showing like 89, 101, 126. Okay, there, 77. Okay? So I'm just really confused. And so the lady, one of the nurses that comes in, she goes, well, is there a way to calibrate it? Like, can you go and manually input what your sugar is and it goes from there? I'm like, yeah. I just don't know how to do it. And so her and I sit there on the side of the bed and we do it. And it hits 270. And we quickly figured out that was the highest that it's calibrated to go to. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm like, so it's just going to say 270 until I get around that number. So the second or third day that I was in hospital, I hit 240. So I go and I calibrate it real quick. I was like, okay, 240. Here we go, 240. And it does my blood sugar 135. And it got me to thinking about, I had taken a trip, I had gone to California, and all the stuff I had done, and I felt lightheaded at one point, and, you know, it made me angry because they're selling this product like it's this reliable thing, and you don't have to do needle sticks anymore, and for people like myself, they're like, I can't do needles, I won't do needles. So I asked the doctor, I said, what happens if I don't do the needles? He's like, you mean if you don't check your blood sugar? And I go, yeah. He was like, oh, that's easy, you'll die. He's like, you have diabetes. Diet and exercise are part of it, but you have to watch and monitor yourself or you're going to die. And so I was like, oh, well, that's kind of dramatic, you know? But it is what it is. So every time they would come in, and I was getting units and units and units and units of insulin. 13 units, 25 units, etc., etc. And there was two different kinds. One was fast acting and one was regular. And the one, and I can't tell you which one it was, one of them hurt and one of them didn't. And when they did them in different locations, like they would do it in my stomach, but then I had so many little whelps. They were like, well, we're going to have to use an alternate site, so we're going to go on the back of your arm. You bastards. It hurt so bad, I screamed some really, really naughty words. And they were like, well, we got to do it. I was like, just go find a place on my stomach that's not a whelp. So it was what it was. But every time they came in to do my blood sugar, and I was poked in 24 hours, the first 24 hours, because they would not pull it out of the little port. I got nothing. I don't know why. Okay, but the first 24 hours, I was poked over 30 times to the point that my fingers were all, like, whelped up because of this poor blood circulation thing that I have. So on the last day I was in the hospital, they came in to do my blood sugar, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. I just can't. Luckily, the guy that was there, he was like, I have diabetes too. I'll be right back. So he goes and gets the alternate site lens. And that's what I've been doing on my own since then. I get emotional. I have to stop talking because when I think about how many people could have been like injured or whatever or passed away because of this stupid watch, it makes me really mad. So anyway, they said that in the hospital, they said, well, we're not going to let you go until you have 3 readings that are 250 or below. We really don't want to let you go at that point, but it is what it is. And so I would compare the watch. And the watch would always be like 126, 89, 74. And then when I calibrated it, it would be close for the first 1 or 2. And then it would drift low. And so one of the nurses, she said, well, let me see the watch. Let me see if it does the same for me. So she puts it on, and it's like 245. And her blood sugar, because she had diabetes, her blood sugar was like 135. We were like, this is very dangerous. This watch is just randomly throwing numbers. This is like going to Vegas. All right, let's see where we get. So when I first came here with my sister, my sister would have to do my poke. I couldn't do it. It just is what it is. I do it now, but those first 3 or 4 or 5 days, oh, my sister deserves sainthood as soon as she dies. Because what I put her through, and she would say, Dixie, if I have to bundle you up like a kitten to get your blood sugar, she's a good sister, because she would do it. And once she had a hold of my hand, she would make me wash hot soapy water at least 20 seconds. And we're trying to get the body heat because of my circulation. And so my sister, bless her little pea-picking heart, she would get a hold of my hand and she would just hold it. And for like the first 3 days, we had like a little fight, not physical, but I would be like, no. And she'd be like, no, we have to do this, Dixie. We have to do it. So my sister, she deserves sainthood because she never, ever gave up on me. And she's awesome. And so she would say whatever the reading was, and I would go put it in the little app that they told me about in the hospital. And there were mornings I would be really discouraged because it was really low, and I was doing my best to eat what I was supposed to eat, drink what I was supposed to eat, take my medicine when I was supposed to. And it was a lot of new information to process at once. And when those numbers would be low, I would do the watch. And at this point, I was doing it as a curiosity. And the watch would be like 240. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Or sometimes it might be like 89. Who knows? It was like I said, it's like go to Vegas and gamble with the numbers. Who knows? So my diabetes doctor, I told him about it. He was like, you need to track that. The watch, just for curiosity, to see if there's any, like, is it running the opposite? Or did we have it set on the standard the rest of the world uses? No, that wasn't it. Yeah, I wish. But the watch, it seemed so exciting. It was exciting for me. All I could think about was that it was going to help me lose weight by not doing keto, because every time I've tried to get keto, I got a kidney infection. Well, guess why? Because I had diabetes. But when I think about it, I'm very lucky because my potassium was so out of whack. They were gonna give me a potassium IV because it was so low. That's why they put me in the cardiac care unit. And they were giving me magnesium and something else. I can't remember. There was so much medicine along with fluids, and it was very scary. Now I look back at those hospital labs, and I'm just like, oh my God, because my hospital has an app so you could see everything. And all I could think about was, I am very lucky that I am here. And if I would have just relied on this piece of crap, I probably would not. I would not be here, and I really like being here. So you'll see these watches advertised on all these places, and you'll see these reviews where these folks look 74. Okay, you're going to tell me it's dropped 90 points in 20 minutes? No. But all these other reviews where they go through it, and they're like, oh, this is the blood pressure, and this is the oxygen, and this is the this. The doctor in my diabetes care said, how is it doing that? How is it generating it? If they can't prove the science, then it's science, not real, but instead silly science that's backed up by nothing. And he gave me a list of all the places that are trying to make needle-free glucose testing devices. Apple was one. They dropped out. They couldn't get it done. Google was one. They dropped out. They couldn't get it done. There's a bunch more. Some of them are approved in other countries. But the ones you see that look like this, the E600 or the E610, this is a E610. I also had the E600. It's a crap watch. It's a piece of caca. The other things that it does, the pedometer works good. The heart rate works. Now, the heart rate matched beat for beat with the hospital. The blood pressure, it was close. It was, within a few points here or there, so that was interesting. It has a little EKG. They did my EKG, or it's called here ECG. It looked pretty similar. The blood oxygen was exactly the same as the hospital. The body temperature, it does I'm going to let it do it right now. It gives a skin and body temperature, and they were all, that was very close to the hospital. It was up or down a little. The sleep thing, whatever. The weather and the other stuff you can put on there as features, whatever. But that blood glucose, which again I'm checking, I know you can't see it because I've got it sitting quietly on my wrist on my lab desk. There, 73. Let me see if I can get that for you. Oh, darn it. It went black. Hold on. There. 73. That's not even logical. I know what I ate. One of the things I ate was 3 of those meringue treats that are, so sugary. I did it on purpose to make sure that my sugar was a little bit elevated. If you are thinking about getting this watch, and I know I'm really long-winded, but I'm really passionate about this. If you are thinking about getting this watch, don't. Because I now am having to check my sugar 8 times a day when I wake up, before and after each meal, and before I go to bed. That's crap. I mean, not that I wouldn't have gotten diabetes, but dang, wouldn't it have been nice for me to have gotten notice of it sooner? Instead of trusting, which I shouldn't have, this untested, unproven medical device. This is why the FDA just put a notice out last week talking about none of those watches or other non-invasive blood glucose checking devices are approved yet. There's some that are coming. There's one that's by, I think is the name of it. Hold on, I've got it written down here. That's Real Science, not Science. And the No Labs, KNOW. They're getting ready. They've already applied. Please, FDA, test us, test us, test us. These people didn't do that. So, I plan on covering a bunch of diabetic things on here. But I'm telling you right now, if you are looking at getting any of these smartwatch glucose watches, do yourself a favor and don't. Because if I would have known about my diabetes instead of trusting this device, that I was safe and I was in normal glucose ranges, I would have had more of a head start on this diabetes and maybe wouldn't even be taking the medication orally that I am. So thank you for watching my very long-winded video. And be careful, because it's your life, it's your health. You have to make great decisions. Have a great night. Goodbye.